Hello and welcome to our discussions on the cost and management accounting. The focus of this session is to understand the treatment of over and under absorption of overheads. We are going to recap the difference between actual costing and normal costing. In the process, we understand the difference between the actual absorption rate and budgeted absorption rate, and end by understanding the treatment or disposal of over or under absorbed overheads. So we know that in actual over costing, the indirect costs are allocated or traced or absorbed by using actual absorption rate, whereas in normal costing, the indirect costs or overheads are allocated or apportioned on the basis of the budgeted absorption rate. So the difference between actual and normal costing arises because of the difference in the absorption rates. Because the actual overheads will be different from the overheads allocated using the budgeted absorption rate, which is generally different from the actual absorption rate, there is a possibility of over absorption or under absorption. If the allocated overheads is greater than the actual overheads, then it is a case of over absorption. If the allocated overheads are less than the actual overheads, then it's a case of under absorption. But this happens only when you are using normal costing. So in that case, what to do with that excess amount or less amount allocated, which is the difference between the actual and the budgeted absorption rates. That adjustment can be done either at the work in progress level or finished goods level or the cost of goods level or a combination of all. So this process of disposing or adjusting the overheads, which arises as a difference between the budgeted rate and actual rate, is the focus of this session. So let us take the first method, which is adjustment to the cost of goods sold. So that means we don't make any adjustment at the work in progress and the finished goods, but straight done at the cost of goods sold. Find the excess amount and adjust to the cost of goods sold. If there is an under applied or under absorbed overhead, add to it, and if it is over applied, then deduct from the cost of goods sold. And this adjustment can also be done by using a proration method, where the excess amount or less amount under absorbed or over absorbed can be charged to cost of goods sold, work in progress and finished goods in one of the following ratios: in the ratio of cost before proration or in the ratio of overheads before the proration. So depending on that, the cost will differ. So let us take an example. Suppose this is the information given by using the normal costing. So work in progress cost is 375,000, finished goods cost is 625,000, and the cost of goods sold is 4 million. And the actual machine hours are 2,000, 5,500 and 30,000 respectively. But since it is normal costing, the overheads included in this cost have been determined by using the budgeted absorption rate. So let us find budgeted absorption rate and the actual absorption rate for this exercise. So the budgeted absorption rate is equal to budgeted overheads divided by the budgeted driver, that is the machine hours. So the budgeted absorption rate is 60, which is divided or calculated by dividing budgeted overhead with the budgeted driver. In the same way, the actual absorption rate is been calculated by using the actual overheads and the budgeted actual overhead and actual driver, which is 65, and the budgeted absorption rate is 60. Since the budgeted overheads rate is not same as the actual absorption rate, there is a possibility of the over absorption or under absorption here, which is the difference between the actual overhead absorbed or actual overheads incurred, and the actual overhead incurred is 2.45 million. The allocated overhead, this is important to observe, the allocated overhead is being calculated generally by using the budgeted absorption rate into the actual driver or actual machine hours in this case. So this 2.25 million has been charged into these overheads. So that means this 5 million includes 2.25 overheads, manufacturing overheads, which has been allocated using the budgeted absorption rate. So there is an excess, we can see that there is an under absorption of overheads because the actual overhead is 2.45 million and the allocated overhead is 2.25 million. So 2 lakh is the under allocated, under absorbed overheads. So how to treat this 20,000? As we mentioned earlier, this 200,000 can be allocated, adjusted by different methods, and one of them is adjust to the cost of goods sold. So no adjustment to the WIP or finished goods. The entire 200,000 will be added to the cost of goods sold. As a result, the adjusted cost will change for the cost of goods sold. So the after adjustment, the work in progress will be 375,000, finished goods 625,000, but the cost of goods sold will increase by this under allocated or under absorbed overheads. So that means this excess money, excess overheads has been only adjusted to the cost of goods sold, and work in progress and finished goods are not affected. Before we understand the relevance of it, let us see the next one. In this case, we'll try to adjust in the ratio of prorated, pre-prorated cost. So the pre-prorated cost is equal to 375, 625 and 4 million. So therefore the ratio is 7.5%, 12.5% and 80% respectively. So this 200,000 is adjusted by making the same percentage or in the same ratio of the cost. So this 200,000 is charged to not just to the cost of goods sold, but to work in progress and the finished goods, unlike the cost of goods sold adjustment. As a result, the adjusted cost will also be different. So in this case, we adjusted this under allocated overheads across work in progress, finished goods and cost of goods sold in the ratio of the pre-prorated cost. But sometimes it is also possible to adopt the another method, adjusted in the ratio of pre-prorated overheads. Pre-prorated overheads. Prorated overheads. So let us see the effect of that. Pre-prorated overheads. So there was a cost here. So all other informations remaining same. So this is the total cost. So we have to find out what is the overheads included in this. Because we have been following the normal costing, so the allocated overheads in these three cases will be the actual time multiplied by the absorption rate. That's the feature of normal costing. So the overheads are allocated or absorbed or applied by using actual time into the budgeted absorption rate. So the overheads included in this is equal to 2.25 million. So the ratio of this overheads, pre-prorated overheads, is 5.3%, 14.7% and 80% respectively. And if we adjust this to 100,000, then we will get amount charged to each component, work in progress, finished goods, and the cost of goods sold. So, as we mentioned here, there are three different ways in which the overheads can be allocated or adjusted. As a result, there is a managerial decision that which should be recognized or used. But before we see that, let us see the difference. If we charge to the cost of goods sold, the cost, there is no change in the work in progress and the finished goods. But if we charge on the basis of the ratio of the pre-prorated total cost, then the overheads, the cost of work in progress and the cost of finished goods as well as the cost of goods sold changes, which is the same. So therefore, a question comes to mind, is there anything called accurate costing, which is right? The cost is different because the overheads absorbed are different. That over allocated and under allocated, if any, is charged to the WIP, finished goods and cost of goods sold differently. So we can see the total overheads under absorbed is 200,000, but the way it has been charged to these depends on the method. So overhead, over absorbed or under absorbed can be applied or can be disposed, can be treated by using different methods. But the different methods will lead to different costs. Now which one is right and which one to be applied, to a large extent depends on the purpose for which we determine cost and the process in which we determine the cost. Thank you very much.